Hello everybody, Justin from Playing Board Games here, and I hope you have been enjoying the start of Secret Week. We are here in day 2, where I have a custom Investigator print and play, as well as a deck list and deck tech for this Investigator, because there's a lot of custom content out there from a lot of great creators, and there's a lot of focus on campaign stuff, but there's not that much on player cards. So I figured that if I did a custom print and play with a sheet that you could print out and play, it means that you're more likely to be able to approach and actually use this Investigator. This is Madeline Gauthier, the curator, designed by aughhhh, who you might know as the designer of the Bloodborne custom campaign, as well as the City of Secrets, which is an investigator pack of 10 investigators. There's 2 of them, so 20 in total, based on the mechanics from the Ravnica guilds in Magic the Gathering. Also, Night of the Vespers coming out soon, which I think is going to be pretty damn sweet. So, Madeline Gauthier, 2523, she is the curator, 6/8 soak, and she's a patron. As a reaction, when you would play an event card from your hand, exhaust X number of cards with the occult or relic trait under your control. Reduce the cost of that event by X. Elder Sign is +0, ready an occult or relic card under your control. Deck building size is 30, deck building options is Seeker 05, Rogue 02, a Rogue 02, not an official one, but still technically a Rogue 02. That's crazy. Also neutral 0 to 5. So this Investigator is actually one that I've built before. When I first did the City of Secrets #1, because this is from Volume 1, when I did like the breakdown of that and checked all the Investigators, Madeline was the one that like stuck with me. I was like, I really need to try this out. This like spell slinging event style Seeker is a very fun build to do, and she has a really cool payoff to help enable that build. Her signatures are the Uralta Schrecken, the von Konnenberg manuscript. It's a 3-cost asset, takes up a hand slot, item, occult, relic tome, occult or relic, so this will help trigger her ability. As a lightning bolt, you can exhaust it. You get +2 to a non-investigate test you are taking, and when you exhaust another occult or relic asset under your control, ready the Uralta Schrecken. So this is really good. It gives you tests for non-investigates, which is good because it can help you in the mythos phase. And then when you use it, other things to pay for your economy, you can ready this, and then also so you can exhaust one of those to reduce the cost of an event, and then ready this and then do it again. Her signature weakness is the Antiquarian. It's a 3/3/3 enemy. It's a hunter and alert, and as a reaction, when it attacks you, remove an occult or relic card under your control from the game to cancel that attack. As always, if you have an enemy as one of your signatures, you need to have probably some sort of plan in your deck to deal with enemies, so that is the case here. We have some enemy control in here, but Madeline, or Madeline, I grew up with a kid. When I grew up in the 90s, so we had like the Madeline cartoon, so I always say Madeline when I see that. But when her ability is pretty straightforward of what you want to do. You want to get occult or relics into play, and then you want to reduce the cost of those relics. I'm actually getting ahead of myself. Before that, down in the video description, you can find not only a link to the deck list that we're going to be talking about here, but you can also find a downloadable print and play for this Investigator in the description. It's also on our Patreon page. That's what it's going to link to. It's going to link to our Patreon page for you to just easily be able to download the PDF. It's totally free. You don't need to join our Patreon to do it. You can just have the link and then go for it. This is really cool. So this is the one that I did. I actually did not print Madeline because I just wanted to test my thing. I haven't printed Madeline yet. I'm actually going to get, I think, this cycle printed professionally because I want to get that all in my collection. Like the cycle of the 5 that I'm doing for the theme weeks. But as you can see, they look really good. And they also have this thing looks really good. What I just do, there's a signature. What I just do is I just put a Magic the Gathering card behind it. In a sleeve, and it works really well for playing. You will have a hard time telling the difference between it in your deck from the cards that are in there, and it is very fun to do. Now, let's get to the deck guide itself. Inspired by the Convoke mechanic from Magic the Gathering, Madeline looks to drop down a bunch of occult and relic assets and then use those cards to fuel event-filled madness. When cards don't have a cost anymore, their power level can be cracked wide open. And that's kind of the thesis for this deck that I was approaching when I was building this deck. And like I said, this is my second attempt at a Madeline deck. I've built her before previously. There's a lot of similar kind of structure in her bones. Her bones are going to stay very similar to my first iteration of it, but it's a little bit more hyper-focused on making sure we get a good payoff to our events that we want to be reducing with the cost, with her ability. Because if we have 4 to 7 relics in play, or occult cards in play, which is kind of the goal of the deck, suddenly now our events are so much cheaper, which is really nice. Expansions you needed, there's a big list of them. There are always going to be a bunch of them. When you build freely, you're going to touch into the powerful cards from every cycle. So here are all the ones you need for this deck. You also notably need a return to for a few things. They don't print those anymore, but you can just like remember the differences for the cards, or alternatively print out a proxy of that card, because if you can't get it legally anymore, you might as well just print it and play it. Okay. Here is the level 0 version of the deck. I'm not going to focus too much on it, but you can see the opening pieces of our thing here. So we have in the thick of it, which we're using to buy a segment of Onyx in an Eon chart. We're going to touch on again this later in the video for sure, for why we're doing that. But those are both relics, and they're going to be good relics once we dive in deeper into this. This is what the final version of this deck is going to look like. As you can see, it actually doesn't change too much. We're just like changing our movement into better movement. We're changing our card draw into better card draw. And we're kind of just like making our other things just better and tighter as we get deeper into this. Let's talk about the cards on an individual level in packages, just so you can get some further context of what you should be doing in those cards and kind of what you're looking at achieving with this deck. First off, we have our first collection of Relic and Occult cards here to provide the base for Madeline's ability. So these are all here at level 0. These are all in here at level 0, these cards. So we're going to have 2 Segment of Onyxes and 3 Segment of Onyxes and 2 Eon charts. Segment of Onyx are myriad, which means you get all 3 copies for 1 experience, which is really nice. So we're going to have 5 cards in our deck on top of our level 0 Occult Lexicon and other things that might exist, like our Aralta Shrekken, for us to be able to use with Madeline's ability to reduce the cost of things, which is really nice. Eon chart, I think, is pretty simple. Like, we're going to be using it to move or investigate when we need them, or for resources when we don't. And when it's empty, we can still use it to reduce the cost of events we play with Madeline's ability. Notably, you can replace it. You do want to still use your Eon chart if you don't need to use it for economy. However, if you do need to use it for economy, don't be afraid to use it for economy, because you're going to be saving a lot of value on this. Whenever you have an ability in an investigator that reduces your resource cost on cards, your curve of your deck is all out of whack. The curve on this deck, if you just look at it, is actually quite high. But the reality is that we put a card into play, and now our Eon chart is tapping to reduce the cost of the things we cast, which is very powerful. Notably, Segment of Onyx is here to fill a different role in our deck than we are normally used to this card providing. We can still warp this into Pen of the Queen or the end of the scenario, but before then we are using Segment of the Onyxes to give us a free emergency cash each turn. This was the most addicting part of my first attempt at a Madeline deck, and I haven't been able to escape the power since. Your economy eventually warping into Pen of the Queen is a fantastic cherry on this top of this value-oriented Sunday. So, this was when I had my first revelation when I built her the first time, right? So I played a Segment of Onyx, and I put the Segment of Onyx in the deck, because I was like, this is an occult card, and it's free. You pay 1 for it, it doesn't cost an action, and you can use it immediately to reduce a card's cost. Holy heck. You can use it immediately to reduce a card's cost, which will then immediately pay it back. You get the second one in, and you're now going even more positive because your first one's in play. Your third one also can just be vibing, and you're essentially, as I say in this, getting a free emergency cash each turn out of your Segment of Onyxes. When you need to warp into the Pen of the Queen, you can, but at the same time, it's one of those late game things that you probably actually, especially if you're playing Taboo, might not want to do. You might actually just want to leave your Segment of Onyx in play forever, because it's just more money, and you might actually, believe it or not, get more value out of it, because the payoff in this deck is not Pen of the Queen, it's the Segment of Onyx. Keeping this going to our next notable occult card we have here is Occult Lexicon. This card acts as damage, card economy, and resource economy. Don't forget, in addition to all the benefits of Bloodright, we can also exhaust Bloodright to reduce the cost of an event. It is an occult card, which means we can use Madeline's ability to turn it over. Note, if you don't have the return to cycle the none front knot, you could just, as I said, proxy it, or just remember that the changes between the two, because they are actually pretty minor. You can just treat the 2s as a 3s, or twos as, you can treat the 2s as a 3 on Bloodright, or shuffle it into your deck. That's kind of like how it works. But yeah, basically with this deck, anything that's Occult that doesn't exhaust to do, like Eon Chart exhausts to do, so you have to make a choice, but as soon as you play an Occult Lexicon, you're getting the value out of Occult Lexicon, but you're also getting the value of it just sitting in play doing nothing, so you can then use it to reduce the cost of your events, which is really nice. Because then it allows us to spend more resources to, for example, deal with enemies. Like the Antiquarian. Maybe this card just kills the Antiquarian, huh? Maybe this is one of our damage options. Maybe. Like, maybe, right? I decided on Crystal of Dreams for one of our accessory slots in addition to Eon Chart. It gives us the event cost reduction due to it being a relic, but it also does double duty to all of our events that we're going to be playing. So now each one of our events that we play, not only is it like free, but it also works really well with a skill card in the future because of the way the Crystallizer works. I channeled my inner Bryn. I knew that it'd be silly to leave the value the Crystallizer provides on the table in this deck. We have some plans to permanently lock down the Guardian when she shows up, which will easily neutralize the downside of this card. So again, like we're adding a second enemy into this deck, not even counting our basic weakness. We could potentially have 3 enemies in this deck once we're all set up. We have ways to lock these guys down. We have our Occult Lexicon, which you just saw, which hopefully makes it a little bit easier. But we have other plans. Additionally, you can also just like get rid of this. You could like play another thing into your slot, into your accessory slot to get rid of your Crystallizer, and then your Guardian of the Crystallizer will also just leave play. This works really good with the Pendant of the Queen because you could fast it if need be, if you are in a very bad situation. But I actually don't imagine you're going to get into a bad situation with this deck. It seems very, very strong. I had some fun with this one because I rarely feel the call of Sharon's Obel to be worth it in most of my decks. It's really complicated, but I think campaigns are already rich enough with XP, and like most level 0 cards are powerful enough for me to play into Scenario 8, but I felt as though that the Obel fit perfectly into this deck. It starts in play once you buy it, meaning that all of your events after it are like 1 less. So your 1 cost events are now free. Basically, once you put Sharon's Obel into your deck, you can now get an always -1 reduction during each one of your turn for your events with her ability. It is a relic. I could not find. I looked. I could not find anything in the rules about being not able to exhaust Sharon's Obel. So there's nothing stopping us from doing that with this deck yet. Just remember that if you die, you're dead forever. We're going to take that risk. I think that risk is probably worth it for the consistency and in addition to the additional experience, which notably I have not used in this deck list. So you can feel free to add even more cool stuff. I just really like the Sharon's Obel with her ability. It seems like really cool to just like have a 1 cost reduction on everything immediately. Because what also that means is basically your first Onyx, so your first segment of Onyx is now like super free, which is really cool. Sorry, I'm losing my voice out of excitement for Seeker Week. We've been talking so much this week, it's crazy. There's been a lot of talking videos for Seeker Week this week, but hopefully you guys all love it. As I mentioned earlier, we're starting in the thick of it. I went with 1 copy of Eon Chart and 2 copies. It should be 2 copies of Eon Chart and all 3 copies of Segment of Onyx. Made a mistake on the slide, and then also like it's going to make Witten Green more consistent. She's going to be the ally that we're going to be talking about right away, and we're also taking advantage of Madeline's ability even better. Relic Hunter is here for a pretty obvious reason. It gives us more relics that we can use to activate our ability with. These are pretty simple cards that I've already discussed in the thick of it previously. Our ally of choice in the deck is the aforementioned Witten Green. She boosts our Brain and Book, so it gives us a bit more security in the Mythos phase, along with Oralta Shreken. We can get to 5 very easily, very comfortably. But what's important is she allows us to find our relic assets. So relics and tome, notably, because that can also dig out the Occult Lexicon, but it can grab everything. The Occult Lexicon, the Crystallizer, the Eon Chart, and the Segment of Onyxes, which are, like, you really want to hit the Segment of Onyxes in this deck, just like passively hang out and play. Very nice. The Segment of Onyxes are really good too, because if you ever have to discard something, they're probably the thing that are like the lowest value to discard, because again, we're not looking at doing a payoff with Pendant of the Queen. It's just kind of their vibing being economy for us. So if we have to lose one, we could just cycle through our deck and get it back again in the future. Okay, we have made it. Oh my god, I've lost my voice completely. All right, let me just drink some water. It's also getting bright in here. I've had to keep changing the camera because the sun coming through the window. We have our first snowfall up here in Edmonton. You don't care. Okay, we've made it through all the groundwork for our deck, and now it's time to chat about the payoffs. When fully set up, we have the potential for 7 resource reduction each round. I think that may be unattainable outside of Christmas Land, so this deck is aiming to get a 4 resource cost reduction on average. So that is kind of like what my focus was for like the baseline for these events, because there actually is a lot of events that kind of just hover around 4 resources that are very powerful. Notably, you can see Intel Report and Connect the Dots here. I think Connect the Dots is actually a very powerful card. People just don't play with it because with that power, putting its finger on the other side of the scale is inconsistency, playing around it, and then in addition, it costs 4 experience. Free clues, I think, are always good, especially in 2-player. Like 2 clues for free at 2 players is a cleared location 90% of the time, right? But the problem with Connected Dots, again, is I think the effect is powerful, but there's just so many things that are just tipping the scale in the other way that the card becomes, unfortunately, in most cases, unplayable. However, I do think that in Madeline, that Connect the Dots is actually super playable, and I think actually would probably be kind of her second signature card. When the cost is 0, it basically is nullifying the hardest part of this card, which is the 4 resource cost, just having that on hand, because there are other events you could play that are better. But if your other events that are better, cheaper, are also free, this costing 0, 1, even potentially 2 worst case scenario is a really nice thing. Notably as well, Intel Report also works really well with Madeline's ability. It's an action. If you have 4, once again, we're aiming for 4. It's going to be one of those things where like it's going to just be a free 2 clues. Cost the action, but not the 2 clues. But you can also kind of like cascade all of these things together, which is something you need to keep in mind. So if you are able to enter Magical Christmas Land where you have 6 or 7 or even potentially 8 resource reduction, you can like do a crazy cascade where you use an Intel Report, then connect the dots, right? Like it's all these kind of things that are just going to come together to sing an absolutely like beautiful song with Madeline. I think Madeline Gaultier is a very, very cool custom investigator. I think she might be like kind of like busted broken in like the right hands, but I think she's very compelling. In the middle here, we also have extensive research. This can already get a cost reduction from your hand. Again, the goal is to easily just make this cost to 0, right? You don't even need to be in big hand. So for example, you have 6 cards in your hand, you play extensive research. It goes down to 5. Use your 4 things, it costs 1. Go down to 7 cards, it goes down to 6, it's 4, it's now free, right? Like these are very easy values to hit, again, when we're aiming around our 4 resource cost production on average. Our movement tech exists in the form of Join the Caravan and Shortcut. Without any conditional cost reduction, Join the Caravan is going to cost 3 after we buy Sharon's Oboe, because it has Madeline Gaultier's card and then also Sharon's Oboe in play. So it's already going to be reduced by 2. And then any other sort of thing, I mean, Sharon's Oboe actually also reduces it to 2 because you can exhaust it to use it for her ability. But anything else, it can easily be reduced to 0 to move her anywhere on the board, which is crazy. It's crazy, right? Shortcut also works with it's just fine too. Like you can move someone else. It's just like Join the Caravan, a free move. It seems wild. Keep in mind the power of movement and clues on locations with these cards and the previously talked about Connect the Dots. Don't be afraid to leave clues on locations and zip around the map, picking up clues at later times in the scenario, especially if you know the scenario and you know the shroud values of locations. This becomes a very easy thing for you to do. I need to play this deck. I had really fun in the standalone. I need to play this in a campaign. I think it would be just so much freaking fun. It just seems so powerful. It seems so efficient. The last two events here that are synergized with our event cost reduction, we have 3 more events that are going to do this, but we're not going to be focusing on the reduction side. We have Working a Hunch being a free clue. It makes it cost... Let's start this again. Working a Hunch being a free clue is what makes this card a strong piece of Joe Diamond's card pool, and I imagine it being comparatively strong in Madeline. This being just, once again, tap down 2 things, this becomes a 0 cost, like a 0 cost discover a clue, is probably still worth a card. It might get upgraded out once you get later in the campaign, you get more things, but I also really like it with Connect the Dots, because this could potentially allow us to get 3 clues for no action. And last I checked, if I just crunch the numbers, I have a calculator over here, just pretend. Yeah, that's pretty good value. That is good value. We're also looking at looping, breaking, and entering 2. And when you're looking at breaking and entering 2, you always want to have some sort of plan for your economy. It's a very similar thing that I talk about whenever you're planning on looping, like the Read the Signs or the Spectral Razor 2s, which the whole thing is about them returning to your hand. You also could look at like other things like... never mind. Let's focus on this. But you basically want to have like some sort of some sort of plan for your economy. But as I mentioned 1,000 times in this video, Madeline has the economy plan built into her kit, which makes breaking and entering a very easy inclusion. This is just something you can do to just get value and like keep enemies down. This is also something how you can like lock down your antiquarian or the crystallizer if you just like keep it in your hand, because you're very likely you're going to be at 8, which is a very comfortable number. You might not you might not always succeed by 3 or more, right? But you also might, right? Like it's like one of those things, you're probably going to be looping this like pretty commonly, especially on standard difficulty. We love cards, and Cryptic Research gives us more cards. 4 experience is a lot of experience, but this is a very powerful and efficient effect, and we definitely should be playing it more than we actually play it. It also works really well with Sharon's Obum because you're going to get that extra boost of experience, which makes Cryptic Research hurt a little bit less. Look at this for additional synergy with both Extensive Research and Extensive Riddle, which happens to be the next card we're talking about here. For our enemy management, we have both we have Occult Lexicon and then both Transmogrify and Existential Riddle. We have the potential for 2 enemies in this deck, so we need to plan for it, as I said earlier in this video. We are looking at locking down enemies away on locations and leaving them be. If there are a clue on those locations, don't worry too much. If they are on low shroud locations, you may be able to connect the dots later. If you are playing Connect the Dots in this deck and you decide not to take it out, because again, these are just suggestions for how you can build a deck for this investigator. You should be aware of Connect the Dots as you are playing it, to just stay on top of it and be thinking all the time, how can I get the most value out of this card? And what you can do is you can lock down the Antiquarian with the Transmogrify, for example, on a low shroud location. And that can and then just eventually just grab those clues with Connect the Dots later. Additionally, the Transmogrify and the Existential Riddle both work very well with the Oralta Schrecken, her signature card, because it's +2 on a non-investigate test, and neither of these are. Of course, this isn't the case with Existential Riddles. They're aloof, but something to keep in mind when you're playing everything I talked about. But basically, these cards are here to lock down enemies and keep enemies, keep your weaknesses out of your hair so you can just have fun playing your cards over and over and over again. There's also a little quiet tech here, where the more cards that you put into your... So, let's say, for example, you lock down the Crystallizer, the Guardian of the Crystallizer, the Antiquarian, and, 1 other enemy with these cards. You have your Crystallizer in play. You have an Eon Shard in play. You have your 3... Sorry, this should actually be 3 higher. So this is what we have so far. You then have your 3 Segment of Onyxes in play. You have your Occult Lexicon in play, right? You have your Oralta Schrecken in play. Let's just say you have that in play as well. You have a Winning Green in play. So we're looking at, 14 cards out of your deck, which means that we are now looping our deck really consistently, especially with Cryptic Writings as well, which means you're going to be able to play your events more and quicker and better and stronger and faster. Of course, this is all with a little bit of Magic Crystal's land where your hand doesn't get disrupted, but this is all very possible and very doable. Lastly, last card in our deck to talk about is Deduction. You want to get clues, and this will help us get even more clues. What's not to love with our good friend Deduction? Man, this sun is going crazy today. I feel like I've had to adjust so much in this video. Okay, but that is, oh no, sorry, upgrade order. I forgot that I do these in these videos now. I've done them for a while, but it's completely slipped my mind. As always, adjust to how you find the deck performs and fill gaps as needed. I know this is less needed for like this custom print and play stuff, but as long as like one person you see this investigator and you think, I want to print and play this, I'm going to consider this a successful video. And that's why I'm doing it, just for that one person. Sharon's Oboe and Relic Hunter, I think, are the things that are going to be what you want to get first, and then you want to upgrade your winning greens, get your extensive researches, your join the caravans, your existential riddle, sorry. Then, like, you can look at some other stuff, but again, these are batches, so adjust as needed. I also, as I mentioned, did not include the Sharon's Oboe experience. The reality is I think that after Sharon's Oboe and Relic Hunter, there's really no bad upgrade you can do for this deck. And a big reason for that is because Myriad is so efficient within the thick of it, and being able to start with 5 of our necessary pieces in our deck is very nice for our consistency. In addition, most of our big payoff events outside of like Join the Caravan, and I mean even like to an extent Extensive Research 1, most of our big payoff events that we're looking at looping is like, or like looking at playing and like not looping, but like playing and like getting through our deck and playing again, are all level 0. Notably, I have the Preposterous Sketches to become Cryptic Researches. These are also really easy, that's going to be a priority upgrade more than it seems, depending on how you feel like you want your card draw. But Preposterous Sketches, I did that over Deep Knowledge 0, mostly for the reason just that you don't need to frick around with curse tokens if you don't want to, and the Preposterous Sketches can be free. All right, this is the deck. I loved it. I hope you loved it. I really want to play. I'm going to definitely, I want to bring her through a campaign. It's just hard to bring custom. I mean, again, I understand why people don't play custom. There's already so many player cards, too, that you have to get through all of those. But I like the designs, and I want to share the designs because I think there's a lot of cool stuff here. And I hope that we maybe see some form of Madeline in an actual game. I think aughhhh did a really cool job with this and all the other investigators of City of Secrets, so you should definitely check that out as well. Again, you can find a downloadable print to play for this investigator in the video description and for the Patreon page, as well as our a deck list for it. That's it. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. Big shout out to aughhhh. Again, I really appreciate you letting me do this with one of your investigators. I think she is really cool. Huge thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel. Huge thank you to the sun for just slowly blinding me throughout this entire video. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of Secret Week. We have five more videos coming your way, and they're all super sick. This has been a really fun theme week to record. I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know if you have anything you want to see for Rogue Week in a few months. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one, and as always, a GG's.